Cricket is different now. There was a time when an international match meant something so huge that your nation's entire pride was on the line. At that point, every single game had to be won with honor. You had to do it the right way. But our sport has changed. And I was reminded of this the other day when my friend Abhishek Mukherjee tweeted this. It's an interesting thought because what he is drawing attention to here is that cricket fanatics who are very clear in the fact that before they only wanted India to win World Cups are now very, very upset that India has lost a bilateral series against Australia. In my series on why India haven't had success in World Cups of late, we talked about a lot of things, but one of them was that it is very hard for the Indian team to experiment, because when you experiment, you often lose. And that's quite often how you find out what your best formulations are. In a perfect world, a team finds an ideal system and they just ride it until their great players age out or other teams find a counter. But in truth, the way that cricket works is you have to find out how to do something that works, then a month later you have to change it because of an injury. 2 series later, you have to find a new method because, I don't know, the wickets didn't allow you to do that. And then you get to the World Cup and the pitches are undercooked or dew changes everything that you have planned and, things happen. Because cricket is not perfect, so you have to change and develop with it, especially at a World Cup where you need to be able to problem solve on the fly, adapt, Darwin, I Ching, roll with it, etc. So it's really obvious that winning right now should be less important to India than holding the trophy. Playing safe and winning a lot on the way to that tournament might not be the best thing. In fact, from what we've seen of India recently, it definitely is not the best thing. So in losing, they might learn what their next level of players can provide. Even injuries at this stage before a tournament can be a really handy thing for a team's development. If the idea is to win big tournaments, and in the case of India, you're in the best few teams in the world, so you're always going to be in that conversation, what you need now is knowledge. Who could sub in for your best players? What role guys can take on a bigger load? Which players are versatile enough to be automatic selections? Who are your good and bad matchups? All these things. What doesn't matter at the moment is beating Australia in a bilateral series. Now, if you are sitting there shaking your head and you think that India need to win more to learn that winning culture, well, they did that going into every World Cup and they haven't picked up a trophy in quite a while. But maybe you are a fan of India or just any team and you're thinking to yourself, well, I just want my side to win every game. And I get that. Because to go back to what I said at the start, this is how we were trained as cricket fans. If you're a tennis fan, you don't care about how your favorite player does at Eastbourne. No one even knows what Eastbourne is. No one cares about their favorite sprinters at the Goodwill Games, if the Goodwill Games is even a thing and I haven't made it up. And if your baseball team is playing a doubleheader in Tampa, who cares? Many sports are like this, and even modern T20 is starting to have a little bit of this nature. When working with teams, one thing I would look for is letdown games in the schedule. 2 road games with a bad matchup, maybe back-to-back games with a team that relies on fast bowlers, or a travel-heavy schedule with good opposition all the way through. But international cricket was built on the idea that there were no throwaway games, that every single match counted so damn much, that national pride and identity was on the line. And even younger fans who came in later were trained to think that way by their fathers and aunties and grandparents, and that old guy down the road who complains that no one can bat properly anymore. But that's not what our game is anymore. And I don't know exactly when this changed, but I remember a very important series before the World Cup in 2007. New Zealand and England toured Australia, and there was a tri-series. Remember them? And at this stage, Australia were the 2-time ODI reigning champs. And Australia won 7 from 8 in the group stages, and everyone expected them to roll England in the finals. But England beat them 2-0 to win the whole thing. And there were a lot of Australian fans who were concerned, because this was happening so close to a World Cup. But Aussie coach John Buchanan talked about it completely different. He talked about Australia like they were an Olympic team who was just finding their peak form at the right time. And of course he was right. Australia collected their 3rd straight trophy and no one cared about England's tri-series win. In fact, I might be the first person in several years to have even mentioned it at all. That was in 2007, and that's quite an important time because that was just before the IPL started, which obviously changed everything. We've had freelance players for a while now, and we're also starting to have cricketers whose main allegiance is to their global franchise team and not their country. And at the same time, the international boards did not cut back on bilateral cricket. We still have our 3 formats pumping along like crazy, even as players go off to play franchise cricket instead. We saw England make the T20 World Cup a priority even while they were playing India in a test match. We regularly see work experience 11s and second choice teams pretty much all the way around the world now. And what that means is that international games is no longer the most important things to players or boards. but that still isn't always filtering down to fans correctly. We're still upset when Bourne sent out weak teams intentionally, and there is also the lack of transparency and honesty around the whole situation. If teams were better at communicating what they were doing, it would be a big help. Here's another friend of mine, Atif Nawaz, talking about how people don't even understand why players need a rest. This is only going to happen more, and if done correctly, it could actually work in your team's favour. But there is still this weird cringe about what is blatantly obvious. We play too much cricket, and if your best players are on the field in all three formats all the time, they won't win the games that you really want them to win. In fact, here's another tweet from Atif. Australia had sort of pioneered this rest and rotation, but they still had trouble selling it. England seem to have educated their fans to the fact that they will experiment, that they will take series off, and that is actually a benefit to them. How they turned up in the West Indies and Netherlands with only left-arm seamers, and it was basically an open casting call. And let's just go back to Atif's Twitter one more time, because there's one more thing I want to talk about here. Pakistan did rest its players, and they lost an embarrassing series against Afghanistan because of this. However, it is over a year away from the next T20 World Cup. And let's just look at Pakistan. They should have made the final in 2021, but for one partnership from Australia. They did make the final the last edition. And yes, they were behind in most of that final, but had Shaheen Afridi not injured himself, who knows what might have happened. There is absolutely no doubt that Pakistan is clearly in the best few teams in T20 cricket at the moment. Losing to Afghanistan will hurt their fans, but it doesn't actually matter at all. If they lost this game in a World Cup with a full team, well then that's obviously entirely different. But losing a series now to Afghanistan, while working out which of their younger and second string players can do the jobs that they need them to do, that is way better than them smashing Afghanistan with a full strength team. India losing to Australia and Pakistan doing the same against Afghanistan obviously hurts the fans. I get it, but it just isn't going to cost them a shot at the World Cup. I mean, that is increasingly becoming a tournament where you just need to make the final round, and then you have a great chance as long as you can problem solve on the fly. The 2017 Champions Trophy had Pakistan win a semi-final on a turgid Welsh wicket before getting into a run fest at the Oval. That is the kind of team you want going forward. That takes a squad. It takes adaptability within your 11. I remember when Pakistan won that semi-final at Cardiff, they beat a very one-dimensional England. What has England gone on to do over the last couple of years in white ball cricket? Add more skills to their bow, become more adaptable. And so when they lose to Bangladesh, I'm sure that upsets some of their fans. But the other side of it is that the fans are willing to understand that England are trying to get better when they need to be better. The key is to learn and develop, and that often happens in losses. Now, I get it, you may not like this, but it's probably not how you want cricket to be played. There are a lot of people who believe in the patriotism of cricket. Every game matters when you're wearing your team badge. And I get that, because I was raised that way. But before there was even an IPL, cricket was already trending this way. There is too much cricket, and there has been for 20 years. And so because of that, cricket is different now. There is more of it, and that means that less of it matters.